everyone, welcome to the fresh video cast episode of My Emotions Matter. And ever since I've started working and I've been like a job holder, one thing that I've realized is that not every day is the same. And the myth, and I think that feeling that every day is going to be the same in a 9 to 5 job, I think that's not really true for me. Because I experience a different set of emotions on different days. Like some days I feel very satisfied because I've been able to complete all my work, but on some days I could be feeling very frustrated because things written in my to-do list have not been completed. So there's this emotional cycle that I go through when I work, which feels very different from day to day. And I think it's very natural for people to experience different kind of emotions on different days during the course of work. And today we'll be talking exactly about this. We'll be talking about how people oscillate between the moments of satisfaction and frustration when working. And we have a very beautiful guest with us for this video cast, Miss Roshee Lamichhane. So she is the assistant professor of marketing at KUSOM, and alongside that, I think she's also being listed the 18th top most influential women by our STCA group. And I think I'm very, very inspired by her because she's been my faculty and I've seen the amount of efforts that she puts into her work. So thank you so much for being a part of our episode, ma'am.
Thank you, Mahima. It is indeed, I feel so happy and so glad to be invited. And more so, yes, when the interviewer happens to be your own student. So yes, thank you so much once again. And maybe if I could also take a moment to thank the entire team of My Emotions Matter, and personally more so because both Bhavana and Sagar happen to be my good friends, and the kind of work that I kind of keep updating myself, the kind of accomplishments or the activities that you've been putting together for the last 2 years, of course with the help of the entire team, is very fabulous. I mean, it's just been 2 years of the startup, and I see that you've been able to kind of influence the life and make a difference in the lives of many people, and mostly with the students, and then trying to make them more emotionally resilient. I think that's something that it's going to be very important for students, of course important to everyone, but if the students are going to learn it early in their life, I think that's going to be making a bigger impact. And I need to make a disclaimer here because I have not taken any course in emotional intelligence, and or neither something on stress management as such. Nor I do practice any yoga, to be very honest. But whatever I would be sharing would be something out of my own experiences. Like you said, we all experience emotions, moments of stress and frustrations. So I would be here just to share my own thoughts and how I cope up with them.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think your experiences would do wonders because we can all learn from each other's experiences so much. What are your thoughts like on the emotional cycles that people go through in work? What kind of cycles do you go through when working? And what are some emotions that you experience in the day-to-day course of working?
For this, I think I have to go back to pre-corona days. I mean, my job, just to reflect on my job as an assistant professor in a university. Prima facie, the job, as many would associate, they would take it as a very easy and a very comfortable job, because they would tend to relate it exclusively with teaching. And that's the farthest from reality, because as teachers, as academicians, it's not just that we only teach. We are expected to put in so many several caps. Personally, for myself also as an assistant professor, I just not take courses, but I am also entrusted with some service related responsibilities. I'm the placement coordinator, and I'm also looking after the department called Enterprise and Management Development Program. That's a research and consulting wing at KUSOM. So that means, of course, there's a lot of additional workload at times, and the stress will be naturally because of the kind of failure to juggle with work and manage the kind of pressures, and also to meet deadlines at times. Because of course these kind of research and consulting assignments are very exciting, and given my personality, what I tend to do is I tend to involve and engage myself. But it comes with challenges, and the challenge is, of course, difficult to manage the time. So a lot of time what I do is I try to delegate part of the work to my team, and I don't get into micromanaging sort of stuff. And I must say that I have got very nice team who are like very enthusiastic, a group of volunteers and interns. And I think that's been some kind of coping mechanisms, because I believe sharing load and equitably, and giving opportunities for everyone to learn is itself important. So that's on the managing the work itself. Apart from that, I think as humans, I mean, we enjoy conversations, so it's also nice to have light-hearted conversations with people who are just not going to behave as colleagues per se, but also as your friends. I think that's going to also put your stress and frustrations at bay.
I think one very important learning that I take from your answer is a delegation of work, and also like balancing the the heavy stress works with light-hearted conversations with your colleagues. Like it can be very important to balance everything. When you're doing work all the time, it can leave you very stressed. So you make sure that you have conversations with your colleagues, you keep yourself light-hearted so that you can keep on going, and at the same time you also delegate work to other colleagues so that the burden of work becomes lesser on you and you can manage your time well. I think that's a very important learning that I take from your answer. And talking about light-hearted conversations with colleagues, sometimes light-hearted conversations can turn into office gossips, especially because in a work culture like that of Nepal, like office gossips is something very prevalent, and it can be like be very fun to engage in office gossips at the moment, but it can be very emotionally draining because it puts you into a lot of negative perception, like it gives you a lot of negative perception. But at the same time, like completely avoiding office gossips can also be impossible, because when you see that all of your colleagues are involved in office gossips and you're not doing so, you might feel like, okay, maybe I'm missing out on something, or maybe I'm not, you might feel like you're not being included into something. So how do you keep yourself at bay from office gossips, and how do you like manage to deal with such things?
It's an interesting. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's been almost 8 years of my academic and my corporate career. I must accept. I think office gossips, which are going to be completely away from the realm of professional setting, is going to be no more pleasing. It's not palatable. As you also said, I mean, it's very human to get excited about gossips, and more so like grapevine, right? We talk about the kind of informal communication that happens in organizations, and which sometimes get interesting. But again, having said that, it gets a little nastier when people get into too much of personal discussions, and that's beyond the realm of professional setting, and that's something not productive at all. And as the saying goes, that it's the great people talk about ideas, and good people talk about events, while it's the mediocre lot who talk about people. I firmly believe on this, and the strategy for me that has worked so far is, one, if you can, I mean, it's not easy as you say, but to distance yourself, or even sometimes you can express some kind of non-verbal displeasure. I mean, you can, so that some form, and also try to be away from those kind of circles, because you can make out the people who are going to be engaging in those unproductive discussions, and which are not going to be healthy in any form. So I try to be engage myself in meaningful and productive pursuits, and also try to resonate with people who think alike, and really try to avoid people who are going to be very fussy and very nitpicky, or, I mean, I can use the word, it sounds extreme, but there can be some toxic kind of people who are very much into nagging and complaining about things. So I think the best thing is to keep yourself away from all of this. That's the only thing you can do, and keep yourself heavily engaged, I tell you, and that really worked, that has and has been working in my case.
I think one very relatable quote that I can think of right now is that you cannot choose someone else's language, but you can choose the kind of environment you want to be in. And that is something so similar to what you said. Like, it might not be possible for you to stop someone else from being indulged in office gossips, but you can like show that you're not very comfortable with such office gossips by two ways. Either you could like physically distance yourself from people who do that, because it can be very emotionally draining, or you could show like that you're not very comfortable with office gossips happening through some sort of non-verbal communication, because we believe in the power of non-verbal communication so much. It can be like, useful to show that office gossip is something that you do not want to indulge in through such a non-verbal gestures. And I think that's a very beautiful tool that you have given to us and all of our audience. So when working, it can also be very natural to experience like emotions like anger and frustration. Like, for instance, I remember the other day I had a meeting scheduled with someone, and just 15 minutes prior to the meeting, the lady just comes and tells me that we cannot have the meeting today because she has some internet problem. And at that point of time, I felt a little angry because I had cancelled a plan. But at that time, I knew that lashing out on her would not work. So, it's very natural to experience emotions like anger, frustration, and even skepticism when working. So, how do you deal with such emotions when working?
Um, as I say, I don't have a domain knowledge as such, when it comes to stress management as such, managing emotions. But generally there are three schools of thought when it comes to managing emotions like stress, like managing stress. So it's something to do with the psychological school, and there's something called the spiritual, and there's something called the workaholic school. So for me, I think the the spiritual school and the workaholic school has worked, because sometimes, yes, if I'm angry or frustrated or I'm feeling low, then probably what I do is I try to um, meet a person that I like talking to, or pick up a book, or go to a place that I would like to be, like just go to a temple and be there for hours, do nothing, so I feel better. And the other way, which I don't know if it works for all, but maybe because I'm more of a workaholic person given my nature, I try to get into doing more works. So if something is putting me off, so I try to kind of distract myself for the moment, maybe by doing more work. So do something else. So just try to forget what has actually disturbed you. So I think that has worked. I was just thinking, I mean, what could have worked in my case? So probably this works in my case.
So I think one very important learning that I have from your answer is that when you feel like difficult emotions like anger, frustration, you make sure to do things that give you joy, whether it be talking to someone that you like, whether it be picking up a good book and reading it, whether it just be going to a place that gives you like calm feelings, or whether it be like engaging yourself in more work. Because of the kind of workaholic person you are, you find a lot of joy in working, so that you engage yourself in work and you distract yourself from the heavy emotions that you might be experiencing at that moment. I think this is something that all of us can learn. And maybe when we also experience difficult emotions, we could also detach ourselves from the situation by doing something that provides us joy, so that we could keep ourselves distracted for the moment. So, as you're working as a faculty, it can be very difficult to find a common time, like, between you and your students, because your students might have different priorities, different preferences, and you might have like different preferences. So, you're coming together and finding that common time to when do you have classes, or when do you set deadlines for assignment. It can be very, very difficult. And when you're not able to find such common times or such common points easily, it can be very frustrating. So how do you manage to work as a team with your students, and how do you manage to collaborate with them in a way that is not very emotionally draining and frustrating?
Uh, this has been a very new experience for every one of us, given the changed times that we are going through. So it's a learning phase for us. I would start with that. And with KUSOM, we were fortunate enough to start to be kind of leader in a way to start the online classes. A week after the lockdown. We didn't intend to wait very long. And of course, there are occasions of frustrations, not resulting into stress as such, but sometimes it would lead to some kind of disappointment, definitely, because there are interruptions with regard to internet, and with regard to the erratic power, given the climatic conditions. Last month was like really difficult, and since you decide a time, and interestingly, the students are getting even busier than the regular classes, though they're not going to colleges, but then they're loaded with works. That's what they keep complaining. A lot of assignments, because the whole course plan has been changing. A lot of exams have been substituted for assignments, so it's a very difficult time to even cancel classes, even in an online setting. I mean, we would think that that would have been easier, but that's not being the case. So therefore, it is stressful in that regard, that you cannot just cancel the class, because you have to adhere to the requirements, and also realize that they are also equally busy. And so therefore, when interruptions happen, it's very natural, we feel that the productive time has gone. But one good thing that has happened, again, given the fact that the technology has come to be a savior, that we can record some of these uh, all of our classes, in fact. So the students, because some of the students are in the remote areas, that they left the city immediately after hearing about the lockdown, and some of them even didn't carry their laptops, so they have a problem accessing the internet. So those people who cannot come online during the scheduled timing, so the lectures are recorded, so they can watch at their time. And one good thing that has happened is, interestingly, there's been 100% attendance. It's actually better than the normal classes, and I see that I kind of also get to hear that they are getting to understand my classes even better. The reason is, probably in the class you would do a lot of side talks, and now it's like you're focused, and that's like, okay, that's nice to know from the students. And But again, having said that, the sad part, I would say, would be the there's something missing, there's the kind of connectedness, the human touch points, like something is missing. You feel like you're talking to the laptop. And even more when it gets bad when you ask questions and nobody's answering, and you just wait for somebody to answer. And students sometimes, not complaining, but they find an excuse to say that, my microphone is not working. So sometimes students can find some tricks like this to get away when they are put into a difficult position. So yes, like in the regular classroom, where you could kind of gauze the mood and the motivation and the interest and the inclination of the students, right? While you do it in the virtual medium and online classes, many would say, of course, you can see the student, but again, in given our context, the internet, in order to ensure that the quality does not get bad, what we do is we kind of switch off the what do you call, the visual mode. So when that happens, now you're just assuming that they're listening to you. So you're just left with nothing but to guess what kind of mindset they're in, or what is the kind of temperament they are. So this is a kind of discomfiture, that's a discomfiture. And then you cannot do anything with a remote teaching learning like this. But having said that, there's nothing much to complain, because at least we are continuing the teaching learning process, and you cannot expect everything to be perfect. And even in a general classroom scenario, because there are issues where even in a general classroom, what happens is there's some in disruptions, no, with the power cut, sometimes may not be very elongated, but sometimes the ppt does not work, or something does not work. So it's just like you should be comparing. I think it's more to do with how you are going to empathize and feel better, rather than complaining and whining about the situation, because you feel there are people, many of them in the remote places, where they cannot even think about going to the classes very soon again, anytime soon again. So in that case, I think the best thing would be to empathize. For me personally, I think, as a teacher, I would rather put myself in the shoes of the learners, because there are people who, as I said earlier also, they left without their laptops. So imagine trying to do everything in a mobile, and trying to do assignments, and a time where they'll also be asked to do take examinations. So when you have a situation like that developing, so you try to ensure that you kind of also empathize with these people, right? So that's what I think, and I try to be generally I try to cooperate and I try to understand and try to empathize and try to kind of, when I give assignments, when I think of what kind of projects should I be giving, that's what I kind of take into account. I don't know if I spoke too much already.
No, I think there are two very beautiful key takeaways that I take from your answer. One is that not putting that pressure to be perfect. Like you cannot expect perfection everywhere. And when you're like teaching through these remote teaching and learning strategies, you cannot expect everything to be as perfect as it was in the physical class. Because in the physical class also it has its own like pros and cons, and the same is the case with online classes. So it is going to have its own advantages and disadvantages, and I think accepting the fact that it is going to have potential downfalls, I think that is very important, and not putting that pressure to be perfect everywhere. And the other beautiful key takeaway that I take from your answer is the ability to empathize. So, because we are all working like collaboratively through these remote learning strategies, or we are working remotely, it becomes even more important for us to empathize with each other and put us like in each other's shoes, so that we can see things from their point of view and we can calm ourselves down rather than reacting via anger, or reacting like when we start empathizing with other people, it becomes easier for us to respond than to react. So I think that was a very beautiful key takeaway that I take from your answer. So there was this article that I found which stated that people who work remotely or people who work from home report very lowest levels of satisfaction from their family life. I'll also make sure to link that article in the description box below. And it could be very counterproductive to what we have always thought. Like we always thought that working from home would be easy, especially in case of work life balance, because we'd be with our family members all the time, so family life would automatically flourish. But data and statistics shows something else, research shows something else. It shows that people who work from home in fact report lower levels of satisfaction. So what are your thoughts on this, and how do you manage to keep your family life healthy when working from home?
Okay, so yeah, one point that has happened that we're all experiencing is, I cannot talk for other sectors as such, but we at academia, I think we're experiencing a sort of little more workload. The workload is getting little more heavier, because the whole need to redesign the entire teaching methodology and the evaluation system, as I would kind of also trying to tell you earlier, because the examination pattern will not be the same, and the way we took quizzes and tests, so therefore we have this need to uh, rethink as to how you're going to reevaluate your own course plan and your teaching methodology. So that is a lot of workload, I tell you. That's a lot of workload, and especially when you're handling a bigger class like 120 students, and it also depends on the kind of subjects you're teaching, uh, and subjects where you require that students have to interact with you more frequently, and that's not going to be just one way mode. So I think that way it has added a lot of work pressure, and which means you have to kind of allocate your own personal time into that. But what good thing the lockdown has done is, in a way, I'm kind of embracing and enjoying it because you are also saving a lot of time with regard to the time that you spend on while you commute for work. There would be a lot of endless meetings, a lot of discussions, and site visits, field visits, and travel. So a lot of them, those time are being saved, so which you can actually put for your more into your reading and writing, which I'm doing personally. I think I never thought I would have been so busier, I would say. Rather, I've become extremely and unimaginably busy after the lockdown, because there's been a series of articles that I've been writing, a lot of webinars and interviews. I never knew. I mean, maybe the COVID that has afforded this opportunity to even think about issues that would be different, given the new experience that we're all going through. But as I said, it's all about how one is going to take up the opportunity and ensure that it's not going to work your family life, affect your family life. Of course, as the article you were suggesting, there is going to be a lot of blur in your personal and your family time, because when you sit down to work, you cannot say like, okay, I will not work before 10. I mean, I would not do that. Right? So there's nothing like an office time or your own time. So yes, office and work time has been significantly blurred. And for those people who really want to stick to that specific work hours, probably for them it's an issue. But for me, I really like to work. So I think it's really not affected. So I'm rather enjoying the fact that I'm getting to work at my own pace, and a lot of time that I would not get to invest in reading, writing, I'm getting to do that now. So I'm really happy um, that way. I'm really happy. I think there's nothing much to complain. It's
I
actually kind of what do you say, blessing in disguise, I would say.
I think one point where I could relate to you is that right now we can all work in at our own pace. Like there is no hard or fast as to when we need to start work and when we need to stop work. Like we can all work in our own pace. And the second phase where we are saving a lot of time is the commute time, because like on normal days, the Kathmandu traffic congestion is increasing every day, as we could see like before the lockdown, and that like wasted a lot of our daytime. But now we have that saved, and we could keep that for our personal selves, so we could like do things that we find joy in. We could like segregate time for our families during the time when we used to commute earlier. So and in that regards, there's nothing much to complain about from your side, especially also because you're a workaholic and you find a lot of joy in working. So because you find a lot of joy in working already, even when you have to like work for extra hours, because as you already stated, like academicians at this point of time are facing extreme work pressures, but you find joy in it. So it's been a joyful journey for you so far.
Yes. Just to add, if I missed saying that, because one thing, yeah, the other challenge would be like, how we could teach in a normal, even a 2 hours class setting, in KUSOM with frequent breaks, just a single break. That's not going to be the same when you do it in online. 1 hour constant delivery on one side, even with frequent interruptions, like, there's some people asking questions, it becomes too heavy. The reason is because the whole exposure to the laptop, and that's going to really the kind of exposure on laptop and mobile is going to really take a toll on our health. And that's what the students are even complaining. So earlier, if you were able to stay and really focus for 2 hours, that's not going to happen when you are there in front of the laptop for a prolonged period of time. So a moment may really come, I was thinking about it, that we start experiencing something called digital aversion. I feel really don't feel like. So for example, I think it would not be out of place to say that, because earlier I was so much into e-reading, into newspapers and all. But right now, everything is happening online. So a moment I want to pick up a hard copy of a newspaper or a hard copy of a book. So that's going to be a challenge for educators, because we have no choice. We have no choice but to continue working in a digital platform until some more period of time. So I think this also demands a lot of innovation and creativity from the part of the academia, I mean, as faculties ourselves, because we cannot expect everything to change so soon and also expect things to be perfect. So just just I think the best way is to be contented and also adapt to this whole new normal, as people call it. It's a new time, and hopefully, even if we come out very soon from this unscathed from the corona thing, the fear, we need to start thinking of how the new teaching learning would be. Maybe it's not going to be remain the traditional form, and may get into more of a blended form, where there could be days where you are still asked to be at home and follow a digital or online teaching learning mode, and there would be days where you are going to the college, and depending on the number of whatever, I mean, if you can take care of the other logistic part of it. So yes, I would just kind of try to conclude saying that we can do nothing but try to coexist and cohabit with the whole fear about virus. But having though we are scared and we keep on hearing a lot of things and we're exposed to so many information, misinformation and disinformation in fact. Rather than you know focusing so much on that, I think this is the best time uh, to really give time for your own readings, something beyond just your textbooks. I think this is the best time because it's these period of isolation that great learners and thinkers have produced many meaningful work. So take it as an opportunity rather to invest more time for your own reading, writing, and reflection.
I think, as you already stated, that everything has gone digital now, like everything is happening digitally. The two major frustrations that people who work remotely might face is device problems or internet connectivity problems. Like you could like, for instance, in my case, I started feeling like very anxious because my laptop's got virus, and I'm just waiting for the day when it stops working, because I do not want that day to come. I really do not want that day to come, because I know the day my laptop stops working, half of my work will be at halt. And so this could be like very frustrating. So have you also, what are your experiences with this, and how do you deal with such situations?
To be honest, even I have this, some kind of fear, I would say, or some kind of angst, because more so when it was this webinar that I was the only speaker, and that too it was hosted by somebody in India. So it was the fear that everybody, there would be so many people logging in, and even in hundreds, and I'm the only speaker, and you can imagine the kind of pressure, like what if the internet is going to go off. So as you said, and as I said, the weather was so bad, and the whole day I just kept praying something should not go wrong. What if I use a mobile, and how do I take care of the PPT stuff? I mean, we're just getting used to some of these new the technologies, right? So Zoom or Google Meet or something, we never experienced this earlier. So we just that within a month or two, we are getting used to new technologies. So yeah, so some kind of fear, I would say, or some kind of stress. I mean, it's not to an extreme level, but yeah, you're already paranoid having that kind of thing, that what if the internet is not going to work, already thinking about it, especially when there are not multiple speakers, and you don't have, just as you said, if I'm the only speaker, what happens if internet is not going to work? So that's a really yeah, I mean, I don't know, I don't have a typical word to coin as such, but yes, a lot of frustrations. So the only way to cope up is probably have if you can afford one, if laptop is not going to work, then think that you can have a mobile to do the same thing. So just having an alternative for the moment has been working. But even with that, how comfortable you would be with a laptop, you may not feel as comfortable in a mobile. And when you're facing someone for 30 minutes, and I mean, just the technicalities, I would say. So yeah, that's, I don't know how to do away with that. I have not found a solution as such. But I think just to have be more patient. Earlier on, I'm also getting used to with a lot of webinars and a lot of interviews at the moment. I'm taking it easier, I mean, really.
I think the two important key takeaways that I take from your answer is that one, you could try to be well prepared. Like you could try to develop alternatives as to what would you do if the internet would not work, or what would you do if your device would stop working. Having alternatives can make you feel better. But sometimes we need to acknowledge that those alternatives might not be as feasible. So in those cases, just taking it easy on yourself is very, very important, because it is very natural for, all of us are facing similar situations right now. Like as you already said, that you were also facing a little bit of anxiety on that day when you had that webinar. So all of us are in the same boat, and maybe taking it easy on yourself could really help. So thank you so much for your wonderful insights, ma'am. Is there anything else that you'd like to say on this topic?
I think we've pretty much covered everything. I think the way to go about is probably, yes, as you said, we are all in the learning phase, and it's a very new experience for all of us. And given COVID has come as an opportunity rather to kind of hasten the or expediting the whole digital e-learning, which or digital or the e-learning process, which earlier would have taken decades. we would be talking about it and then probably never do it. But it has come, in that case, it has come as an opportunity, and we should also, for that reason, take it as an opportunity to kind of keep ourselves abreast with the latest technologies and try to see how we are going to be um, useful for our learners, and which means, of course, becoming more adaptable and trying to adapt with the latest requirements, and see how you can be more creative, even when you're or imaginative in an online platform. As we said, there are certain issues which are going to be very different in a remote setting, and it's not going to be very easy to make it as interactive as in a normal classroom, where you can figure out how, if you look at least if you're able to see the students in person, how to deal with them, how to tackle with them, or maybe when to crack a joke. But here you don't know. I mean, keep asking. So for me, it's I don't know, I keep telling to my students also. So when I explain a concept, so I right now just now teaching research, so of course, which is not a very interesting topic for many. So when I teach a topic, I take every 15 minutes, I'm pausing and I'm like, have you understood? And I'm asking people, I'm seeing who all are there, and asking them to answer. And they until they answer, I'm not going to go ahead. So it's like frequent pause are going to be even more important, and I try to ensure that some of at least few people respond, and few people keep asking questions. And this time I'm also trying to kind of redesign my course plan. I was trying to try to make them understand certain fundamentals in a different way, like making them engage by giving assignments from the very beginning, because you cannot wait like in the regular classes, where you could finish everything and then expect them to do a project or something. Because right now, even doing a research in a field is going to be tough. You cannot go and collect data. So that way, for with regard to my subject, every day I'm thinking of how I can make it different. So it's been challenge, but it's been a challenge in a way. But I think that also gives me an opportunity to be more imaginative, think of how I could have delivered better. That's what keeps me busy also a lot of times. So that's how it has been. Thank you once again. It's been a wonderful almost half an hour probably that we've been talking. And once again, good luck to your entire team for all the wonderful initiative that you've been doing, and keep continuing. My best wishes are there with all of you. That's all.
Thank you so much, I think one thing that I've learned from this conversation is it is very important to manage our emotions in a way that is very productive. Like, for instance, in your case as well, you are seeing this whole crisis from the lens of opportunity. So you are like grabbing as many opportunities as you can to become a better version of yourself in this pandemic. And I think it's so important for all of us to learn that, and for people to learn that we have a session called Managing Emotions at Work. So if you'd like to subscribe to our services or would like to know more about our services, please feel free to reach out to us. Until then, please stay protected, please stay safe, and please keep on being emotionally resilient. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.